Hello, good evening. Today, Baruch Hashem, Be'ez Hashem Yisborach, we're starting a new Torah. This is Torah Samech Beis, Torah 62. And this Torah right now is being learned by Hasidah Breslov at large. And they will be learning it probably, until Elul. So the digging into it, learning the iyun, writing about it. So, B'ezrat Hashem, we will join them and learn it together with them. So this is a Torah that is written in the original language of Rabbeinu Zal. Rabbeinu Zal starts the pasuk, Vayasev Elokim Esam. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu has led the nation in a roundabout way. This is what the translations say. They went Derech HaMidbar Yam Suf when they came out of Egypt. So what happened was that they made the crossing. They went around. That the crossing is that so the Egyptians were under the impression that Am Yisrael is lost and so forth and so on. But Vayasev Elokim, the word Vayasev means he led them in half a circle, like in a circular route. But the word Vayasev is also known from the Haggadah Shel Pesach, right? It says, Man Ishtana, that, all the nights of the year we eat, sitting or reclining. And tonight we're all reclining. Mesubin. So Vayasev is Milshon Mesubin, sitting down, getting down to eat a Suda. This is what the pasuk that the Torah is based on. And at the end of the Maimer, B'ezrat Hashem, Rabbeinu will explain how this particular incredible, fantastically deep Maimer is embedded in this particular pasuk. And it starts as follows. Aleph, Da. You should know. In the Gemara, when the Gemara wants to let you know about a new union, it says Tashma, come and hear. In the Zohar Kodesh, when they want to bring about a new union, it is written Tachazi, come and see. And in Likutey Moharan, it goes another level higher, which is called Da. You're already going to the level of pure Das. So Da Shadei Achilosem Shel Yisrael, you should know that it is through the eating of Israel, of Am Yisrael. This brings about the unification of Kudsha B'richu and the Shechina apin be'apin, face to face. As it says, Yom el Rus, Boaz said to Rus, Lesa Oichel, during the time of eating, Kshi Halom, So what is alluded to in this la'esa oichel, during the time of the meal, during mealtime, daika dafkas during mealtime. The achila, in other words, through the achila. Gshi haloin, come hither. This is the unification of Kodesh Baruch Hu and the Shechina. That this is, so a little explanation. When we say Kuchabrichu, we are talking about the Kodesh Baruch Hu, the way he is beyond the world, as it were. And we cannot perceive a Kodesh Baruch Hu on that level. Now, Shechintei, the divine providence, the Shechina. Well, Maisa, the Shechina and Kodesh Baruch Hu are one thing. So what does it mean that they become one? The Shechintei means that we see a Kodesh Baruch Hu in this world. Because beyond this world, the Kodesh Baruch Hu is omnipresent and obviously visible by all. But in this world, the Kodesh Baruch Hu is concealed. And the reason why Kodesh Baruch Hu is concealed, so we will have choice. We have free choice. Without this, we have no free choice. And so, this particular yichud is being done through the eating of Am Yisrael. So what happens is that when the Kodesh Baruch Hu and the Shechina in Ruchnius, in spiritually, when we say yichud, means that there is a coming together where there is a give and take between the two bechinas. That the Shechina gives to Kudsha B'Chu, and Kudsha B'Chu obviously gives to the Shechina. When they become one, it's called when there's a mutual giving going on. So the Yichud Kudsha B'Chu is the Kodesh Baruch Hu is represented by the particular spiritual structure. It's called parts of persona, which is called Ze'er Anpin, means the small faces. Very interesting. We're learning last night in Maseches Sukkah. Maseches Sukkah deals with how high the minimal height the sukkah needs to be. So while it learns from different things, ultimately it learns that obviously it should be Sarat Fachen, that's a minimum. Sarat Fachen, that's the minimum height of the sukkah. And within that, it learns it from the Aron Kodesh, the Holy Ark. So the Holy Ark was 9 tefachim high. And upon it, there was, the cover, which was another tefach. Together is 10 tefachim. This is underneath the Sarat Tefachim, Zishus HaYochid. Above it is Rabin, as we know from Chashabis. So the Gemara goes into a whole discussion of how do we know that the thickness of the kapiris, the covering of the Holy Ark, was 1 tefach thick. So through a whole, mahalach of learning, the Gemara learns it ultimately from the size of the face of the keruvim, of the cherubs, which are on top, on top of the kaparas. So ultimately, it says, what is the size, the minimal size of a cherub? Cherub means a child. What is the minimal size of a human face? The Gemara says this is a tefach, one tefach. So that's a human face size. So the Gemara asks, which says, there's another pasuk that states there's kruvim ve'adam, is cherubs and men. So how can you say that the minimal size of the face of men is represented by a kruv, by a cherub? If you say cherubs and men, so you see cherubs is one thing and then men is another. So it's not one thing, it's two separate things. And this is, you're right. Cherubs represent, it says anpi zutri, small face. And now that's the minimal size. Adam is the apin ravravi. This is the big face. We know that in Kabbalah that there is the spiritual structure, which is called arich anpin. That is the long face, the big face. And we have zer anpin, which is the small face. Very interesting nekuda. So when zer anpin, which is the 6 spheres from Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Hod, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, this is the zer anpin. That is the series of Sefirot, of the tubing, as it were, that trickles down, that manifests down the chayos from the chochma bina das, from the moichin, all the way to the malchus. Malchus is the recipient. So the zer anpin is already full with the shefa eloki from the moichin. It's all waiting in the midah, the lowest midah of zer anpin, which is the yesod. When the malchus and zer anpin come together, the shefa from chochma bina das is being given, shared with the yesod. That's yichud kucham yichud. That is the tachlis of what we need to do in this world. In other words, that we will be able to discern the mitzias of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world. That's the Shekhinah. When Kudsha Baruch Hu u'Shechintei become one, then we are able to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu the way he, quote unquote, really is. Right now, when the Shekhinah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, are separate, so we only see, evidence from the actions of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But of course, it is open to interpretation. So we need a munah. We have to bridge the gap, as it were. But in the future, Hashem, which is Kudsha Baruch Hu, which is zer anpin, and Shmo, which is the Shekhinah, will be one thing. Now, in the meantime, as time goes on, we are building that particular unification step by step, little by little. We're building the stature of the Shekhinah until the Shekhinah will be ready, B'ezrat Hashem, time for Mashiach, to be fully unified with Kudsha Baruch Hu, and then we will see HaKadosh Baruch Hu openly. This is, but the thing is, it's being done by our Torah, by our mitzvahs, by the tefillas that we learn, that we daven. All this is being done. Rabbeinu is going to show us that when a person is on a proper madriga, as we will learn on, that particular tikkun, that particular rectification is done by the act of a Jew eating. When I am the way I'm supposed to be, and Rabbeinu obviously will teach us what that way is, by simply sitting down to eat, that brings about an action of the unification of Kodesh Baruch Hu and the Shechina, Kodesh Baruch Hu and the Shechina. And the way we said before, and the reason why we say Gshi Halom, that Boaz, which represents the Zer Anpin, and Rus, which represents the Malchus. Obviously, Rus is the grandmother of David HaMelech, right? So she is the mother of Malchus. She actually lived for many, many years, and she actually lived to see David HaMelech being king. She, Baruch Hashem, she lived for a very long time. She was zeicher to see her grandson, his grandson, the king of Israel. She is the mother of Malchus. So Rus represents the Malchus. It is said that originally, we say Megillas Rus, originally there was Elimelech, there was Naomi, his wife. They had two children, Machlon and Chilion, right? They married two women in Moab, and they died. And Machlon married Rus, and Chilion married Orpah. Now Machlon and Chilion both passed away, and so did Elimelech. He also died. And Naomi and Rus were the only one who were left. And they came back to Israel. And then, of course, Rus, she got married. Boaz married Rus. And this is the progeny of Malchus based David. So the Zohar explains, the Arizal explains that originally Elimelech and Naomi and Machlon and Rus represented the four letters of Shem Havaya Baruch Hu. Elimelech represented the Chochmah, and Naomi represented the Bina, and Machlon represented the Zer Anpin, and Rus represented the Malchus. Now, being that the whole thing of Elimelech, his wife and his children, leaving Eretz Yisrael in the time where Eretz Yisrael was in a time of famine, it was the wrong time to leave. There was a damage. They damaged that. So that's the reason why Elimelech passed away and Machlon passed away, and Chilion, obviously. But Zohar says that instead of Machlon, Elimelech, Naomi, Machlon, Chilion, and Rus, Machlon and Chilion were replaced by Boaz. So Boaz is Zer Anpin, the Ois Vav, and Rus is the Malchus. So this is what Boaz says to Rus. Zer Anpin says to the Shechina, to the Malchus. Le'esa ochel, the time, mealtime, the time we're going to eat, Gshi Holon, come hither. Now, so obviously, we want to learn that Gshi Holon, come hither, means Malchus. That B'chinas Ha'ado, we know Gshi Holon is talking about the unification of Kodesh Baruch Hu and the Shechina. B'chinas that the Yosef's brothers, when they spoke to Yosef, they asked him to release Binyamin, their brothers. It's read, Vayigash Elov Yehuda. So you, Yehuda, came hither to Yosef. The Zohar says this is not a simple, just one person came close to another. Zohar says, Da tikravta malka bemalka. This is the meeting point between kingdom and kingdom. A king and a monarch and a monarch. Because we know that Yehuda is the king of the Shvatim. He is the king of all the tribes of Israel. And Yosef, of course, was the king of Egypt at the time. So it says, Vayigash alav Yehuda, that Yehuda came hither to Yosef. He came close to Yosef. This is the coming together, says the Zohar, of Malka b'Malka. In other words, Yehuda, whose root he stems from the spheres of Malchus, got together with Yosef, whose root is in the sphere of the Yesod. So Vayigash, he came close. He came close to him. He came hither, as it were. It alludes to the unification of the unification of the Yesod and the Malchus. Before we said the Yesod, this is where the entire Shefa of all the spheres above is waiting until there's a yichud between Zerampin and Malchus, and then the Shefa comes down. This is the yichud Kochabichu Shchinte. That's why Goshi Haloim, when he says, come hither, when Boaz tells Ruth, come hither, it is something that alludes to unification of the Kodesh Baruch Hu and the Shekhinah. This is done, the time of eating. That's what Boaz tells Ruth. When the time of eating comes around, they're going to be a unification of Kodesh Baruch Hu Shekhinah through the eating. And he says, however, the eating, it has to be a food after it was purified, it was sifted. It doesn't have nothing untowards is mixed into it. It means that the food is cleansed from the stranglehold of evil and the klippos. What happened was when Adam Arishon, he ate from Esadas, that already mixed all the foodstuffs in the world. It's a mixture of good and bad together. And the bad and the kelipot. A little explanation. Everything that Kodesh Baruch Hu, as after the Chet Adam Arishon, the idea was that Adam Arishon will wait for a couple of hours, then Shabbos will come in, then he will be able to eat from all the trees. Kodesh Baruch Hu says to Adam Arishon, it looks like there is a contradiction. First of all, he says, Mikol etz hagan achol tocha. Should eat from all the trees in the garden. All the trees include the tree of Eitz Hadas, the tree of knowledge, good and bad, right? And it says, however, from the tree of knowledge, good and bad, don't eat. So how does the first part of the pasuk, it says you should eat from all the trees of the garden, and then it says, but don't eat from that tree? How do they live together? It seems to be, contradiction. So Chazal answered that the thing is that from that particular tree, he wasn't ready to eat until Shabbos came in. Adam Rishon was created on Friday, and there's a whole cheshbon of Chazal, what was created during Friday. And Adam Rishon was created on the 9th hour of the day. The day, of course, is 12 hours. And the 12th hour is Shabbos is coming in. So Adam Rishon was created in the 9th hour. The 10th hour, he ate from Etz Hadas Tov Ra. It was all, don't eat until Shabbos come in. And he did it. He did eat. That's what Chazal say in the Chet Etz Hadas. If it would have waited for 2 more hours, as the Kadosh Baruch Hu commanded him, what is Etz Hadas? So Chazal has a machlekes. Some people say, some Chazal say, that the fruit of Etz Hadas was grapes, and some say that the fruit of Etz Hadas was wheat. If Adam Rishon would have waited until Shabbos comes in, from the grapes, he makes wine, right? He can make kiddush. And from the wheat, making chalas, make kiddush. And then he would live forever. But he ate prematurely. And because he ate prematurely, death was decreed on the world. Because it says, Kadosh Baruch Hu tells him, B'yom ochelcha mimenu mos tamus. In the day that you will eat from it, you shall surely die. He says, in the day that you will eat from it. It does not say in the night. In other words, if you eat it by day, then you for surely die. But by night, it's okay. Then it's allowed. Now, since Adam ate from Etz Hadas, that caused the evil to enter the Metzias of Adam. Beforehand, talking about Etz Hadas, the tree of knowledge. So what does it mean? Before he eats from the tree, he doesn't have any das. How can you tell him not to eat? Obviously, he had the das, but what kind of das? He says no. The thing is that Etz Hadas Tov Ra means that there existed good and evil. Because Baruch Hu created good and evil for Adam Rishon to choose what to do, not to eat or to eat. But the evil was outside him. It was an external choice. When Adam Rishon ate from the fruit of Etz Hadas, evil became part of man himself. It entered the metzius of a person. The entire world, everything in the world has to be purified. The mixture of good and bad is pervasive throughout the Bria, throughout creation. And as a result, we need to sift and separate the good from the bad. And the good is consumed and the bad is discarded. The good is the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The bad is the kelipot. The kelipot is the hiding of the omnipresence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Any kind of hiding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is called a klipa. It's called a husk or a peel. You have an orange. The main fruit is obviously the orange. So what do? You have to peel it, right? You have to take off the klipa, the peel, and peel it, and then you can eat it. The same thing applies. So everything in the world needs to be separated, purified. Now we're talking about a long process of purification. When we, the main food of men is bread. When we make kiddush, if we make, whenever it is you make a moitzi, milchatchila should make a moitzi on a full loaf, and you should hold the lechem, the loaf, with 10 fingers. So Mishnah Berurah says, why do you hold the loaf with 10 fingers? To allude to the 10 mitzvahs that are intrinsic with the process of making bread. It starts when you have a field. You have to leave, as we see in this week's Parsha, you have to leave the very end of the field, the pail, for the poor people to eat. And they come and they eat from it. And there's a whole union of orla, 3 years, you can't touch it, and not by wheat, but by trees. But when you reap it, then there is leket, shichecha, and peil. Then you have trumas and meisers that you have to give the tis and the trumas that you have to give, and until at the end, when you make a bread, you have to take out challah from the bread, just challah, and give it to the kohen, and then you bake it, and then you make a moitzi. So the 10 mitzvahs, there are 10 different steps that the bread goes through, that the material that bread is made of. There are 10 mitzvahs along the way until it actually comes from a field to something that you can eat. Each and every step represents a process, a step of purification. The field cannot be consumed unless, of course, it's Shemitah. And nothing from the field can be consumed unless you left payah for the poor people to eat. If a person did not leave a portion of his field available to poor people, what happens? The portion of poor people is mixed in the wheat that you will be ultimately consuming. It means that the klipas, there's a damage, there's a pgam in the food that you will ultimately be eating. Such a food cannot be consumed and cause a state of unification of kuchavichu shrinte. Now, we know that when a person eats the food, and even when you bring it when he brings it to the silo, you're supposed to separate, the chaff from the kernels, and you have to grind it, and then you have to sift it again, and so forth and so on. All these are steps of separating the good from the bad. And when he gets into a person's hand, he has to make a bracha. And when he makes a bracha on the food, that's another step of purification. And then a person consumes it. And the act of chewing is another act of separation. Because the chewing and the spit in the mouth of a person is the beginning of the digestion. It's a very important part. When a person swallows, again, even the physical food, the physical is being separated, and the good nutrients give life to the body. And the klipas, the leftover, is being discarded, obviously. Now, all this is action of separation, of purification, after purification. This is what Rabbeinu is saying here, that the chila has to be of a food stuff after it was fully purified. So, first of all, we're talking about that when the food gets to you, it should have already passed all the proper steps of purification, so it is fit for consumption. But that is not the final step of purification of the food that will make your eating so special and so spiritual that by the mere action of eating alone, you will be causing just by eating. Without Hashem, what this particular step is, how do you finally purify completely the food? Without Hashem, we will learn next week. So, Without Hashem, tomorrow night we will learn in Kol Bresla, Without Hashem, and I hope to see you then. Without Hashem, I believe we finished Torah 60, as we finished Torah 29 before, and it is. We'll see what Torah we will learn. It's possible that we will move Torah 62 to Thursday and continue where we ended Torah 29. We'll go to Torah 30. We'll see what happens tomorrow night. But whatever it is, Kol Tov, and B'ezrat Hashem, we'll continue and learn more tomorrow.